everybody, it's Lori again and welcome back to my kitchen. Today I would like to share a really fun and easy little recipe that you can and this one is actually something that is so easy you could actually have your small children help you with it, and I almost promise that this is also a recipe that they are going to be super excited about, because today I'm talking pasta. Now, I cannot tell you that pasta is an approved item to can, but I personally have been canning pasta in a couple of different ways for many years, and I have never had any problems with foodborne illness or failure on the shelf or any of those things that they warn you about. So that's kind of my disclaimer. This is not an approved recipe, but it is definitely approved in our home and with our family, and we've been eating this for years. So I want to share it with you today, and what it is tortellini, cheese tortellini in pasta sauce. And like I said, this is a super simple, fun one that you can have the kids get involved with. They'll have fun helping you, and they will have a wonderful sense of accomplishment when they see these finished jars of pasta that they can then heat up and eat themselves, and they'll enjoy it, because what little kid doesn't like spaghetti sauce, right? I think it's one of the staples in a lot of homes. So all this recipe calls for is dry tortellini, 3 cheese tortellini, okay? And I want to be very specific about this. Cheese tortellini. Do not use mushroom and do not use meat. Only the 3 cheese. I do use the Barilla brand. Barilla makes me feel Italian. I can talk fancy. Barilla. Anyway, this is a bag, a 1 pound bag. And a 1 pound bag will fill and net you or complete 6 pints of finished product, okay? So a 12-ounce bag makes 6 pints of finished pasta. So we have our 1 pound bag of pasta. If you're going to make larger amounts of this, of course, you know, you're going to need more bags. And then 2 parts of spaghetti sauce to 1 part water is all it takes. Very simple, okay? So let's start with our canner right away here today. And all of this is being done at room temperature, okay? Nothing is hot, nothing is cold or chilled. It's all just room temperature. And remember, whenever you're canning, always match your canner temperature to whatever food item you're working with. So if you're making a hot jam or a hot soup and you're putting that hot soup into a jar and then going and putting those jars into your canner, you make sure your canner is hot. If you're doing cold items, make sure your canner is cold. So today I'm considering this a cold item. This is all at room temperature, so I'm going to be putting it into a room temperature canner. Now this does require to be pressure canned for 20 minutes, but you can also hot water bath this item for 60 minutes, okay? But I'm going to be pressure canning today. So I have my pint jars ready. I'm using my Presto 23 today, which allows me to double stack pint jars, and I am going to be double stacking them, so you'll get a lot of useful information just for other canning applications in this short video today. So I have my required amount of water, which Presto calls for 2 to 3 quarts of water. So I have my required amount of water in my canner, and that was just cool tap water. And we have well water, which is hard. We have a lot of calcium and minerals in our water. And you know, a lot of people add a splash of vinegar to their canning water, and what that does is it helps to keep all of those hard water stains and crusties off of the outside of your jar. And I used vinegar for years until I discovered that cream of tartar does the same thing, and it's a lot more gentle on your rings and your lids. Vinegar, especially in the pressure canner, vinegar tends to corrode, particularly today's cheaper screw-on bands. It corrodes them in the first use. Seriously, you stick anything in your pressure canner, when you have vinegar in your pressure canner water, and today's new screw-on bands, they're going to corrode immediately. A lot of times they'll even come out of the canner looking black right away. But anyway, I found out that cream of tartar works just as well at keeping hard water stains off of your jars, and so that's what I use. Now we do have a water softener, so you can adjust this measurement depending on how hard your particular water is. What I suggest is start with about a half a teaspoon of cream of tartar in your canner, and if you're finding that you're still getting stuff that's stuck to your jars, then you need to increase that to maybe 1 teaspoon. If a half a teaspoon is working really, really well, you can decrease it if you want. And I have found with our water softener properly working, I can get by with 1/4 of a teaspoon of cream of tartar in my canner, and it works just fine. So I just add that right in the canning water, and that's going to take care of any of the hard water issues on my jars, and it's not going to corrode my rings and my lids. So let's get to the actual recipe. I'm going to kind of aim you down here so you can see what I'm doing, and I'll just chit-chat you right through the whole thing. Now, first of all, 2 parts of spaghetti sauce. Now, I'm using a combination today of store-bought spaghetti sauce or marinara sauce and my home canned spaghetti sauce. I didn't want to suck up all of my good homemade sauce for this particular recipe, so I'm just kind of doing a half and half today. So what I do is I just simply dump my spaghetti sauce into a large pitcher, and I'll pop open my homemade one here and get that in there too. Oh, there wasn't anything to scrape off the lid that time. So we'll get that in there. So 2 parts of spaghetti sauce to 1 part water. Now I'm not over by my sink, so I just brought water along with me over here by the stove. And I want all of that good tomato sauce that's on the sides of my jars. So as I'm filling my jar, I kind of like to rinse it and get all that good stuff. I want all that tomato flavor. And it is a lot easier at the sink. I'm going to make an absolute mess here trying to get all this stuff. Okay, so we have our two jars of spaghetti sauce, and now we have 1 jar of water. I'm just going to dump that water into the spaghetti sauce, and then we are going to stir. So now we have our diluted sauce. Now, this is the fun part for the kids. All you're going to do is you're going to take your pasta and your pint-sized canning jars. Now, you can use either a regular mouth like what I'm using. I do have, I think, 1 or 2 wide mouths today, but most of them are regular mouth today. You just take your pint-sized jar and you have those kids fill that jar 1/3 full, only 1/3 full of pasta. Now, if you need to make an example one, you go ahead and do that. You pour the first one 1/3 full, and then your kids can use this as an example and match up what they're filling to make sure that they're at the same level as what you filled, okay? So that's literally it, guys. You're just filling that jar with dry pasta right out of the package, 1/3 full. And like I said, you should get 6 pints out of this 1 bag of pasta. And this is all still very adjustable at this point in time. If you feel like you overfilled a jar, just take a few out and put them in another one that needs a few more. Okay? So just make sure that you're only at 1/3 full. And I've got a little extra bag here. I'm going to add just a few extras to a couple that I feel are a little low. Okay, so there we are. Now, another fun and easy step for the kids to do is now you just take your 2 parts of spaghetti sauce and 1 part water, and you just pour it right on over that dry pasta in your jar. And I do it to about an inch headspace at this point in time. Now this step, I don't want you to get too far ahead of yourself, because once that pasta gets wet, it starts sticking together. So I've filled it to approximately 1 inch, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to stir that pasta up really well. And I'm using just a little rubber spatula to do this. You can use a wooden spoon, you can use a spoon handle, whatever you want to do is fine. And you just mix that, and you can see that my 1 inch, after we got this mixed, my 1 inch headspace, after stirring that pasta, the pasta sauce filled up in between all of the pasta, and now I have over a 1 inch headspace. And what you want to do is you want to top off to 1.5 inches, okay? So you want 1.5 inches. Oops, I'm not in the camera. You want one. Now remember that the screw band of your jar is generally 1 inch. So you want 1.5 inch. So this one needs just a little bit more sauce in it to get to that 1.5 inch headspace. This one is looking spot on perfect at 1.5 inches. I'm going to give it just a little more stir just to make sure that my fluid level, my fluid is all the way through my pasta, and that's looking just about perfect, 1.5 inch headspace. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill all of the rest of my jars as quickly as I can, because you don't want this pasta just sitting here in the pasta sauce for a really super long time before you get into the canner. But just keep mixing the sauce as you need it, and stir, fill a little bit more, and then we'll come back and we'll get all of the lids on our jars and get them in the canner. So I'll be right back. All right, guys, so I have my first batch all filled to the 1.5 inch headspace. And at this point in time, I want to just stop for a second and tell you a couple of different things. Number one, if you are buying store-bought marinara or spaghetti sauce, please keep in mind that these jars with the lug type, single one-piece lug type lids, these are reusable for canning. So save those jars and reuse them. That's number one. Number two, as I said, I am using my Presto 23, in which I am going to double stack today. And I'm probably going to be able to get in a few more jars than what the manual says that you can. I think you can fit in up to 18 regular size mouth jars. And I found with some of my older style pint jars, I can actually fit a few extras in. But where I'm going with that is make sure that you fit your jars before you start filling. Fit your jars in your canner so that you know exactly how many jars you can fit in your canner, because you don't want to overfill a whole bunch of jars that you can't then get into your canner right away, okay? That's a really important thing. This is one of those projects that you only want to prepare as many jars as can fit in your canner. So those are the two important things I wanted to stop and say. So now we are back to my jars being full. And just like any other canning project, you just take a clean wet washcloth, and after filling your jar, wipe those rims off really good. I don't want any spaghetti sauce on there interfering with my seal. So, and there I go dropping stuff again. Well, I can't say I'm the most graceful canner. I'm lazy canner, and I'm not a graceful canner either. You get what you get, guys. So I've wiped my rim, I'm placing my lids, and then I'm just going to screw on my band, fingertip tight, and I'm going to put it into my cold canner. Cold product, cold canner. So I will get the rest of these completed and in the canner, and we'll come back in another minute. All right, guys, so we're back. I've got all of my jars are filled. I wiped the rims, I put the lids and the bands on. And I just want to remind you again, super, super important. Let me tilt up. Super important to leave 1.5 inch headspace. particularly with this project, because pasta, of course, is going to expand inside the jar. Number one, do not overfill with pasta, only 1/3 full of the dry pasta. Pasta expands in the canning process, and this is one of those canning projects that it likes to overflow the jar. And so if you overfill with pasta, or if you overfill with pasta sauce, you're going to have overflow issues, which means that the spaghetti sauce is going to be forced out underneath your flat lid, and you're going to have seal failures. So super important, 1.5-inch headspace for this project. Okay, so in my canner here, this is my Presto 23. You can see that I have my whole lower layer of jars are already in my canner, okay? And I fit 2, 4, 6, 8, I fit 10 of them in there. Now, whenever you're double stacking, you want to make sure that you place something in between your lower level and your upper level jars, okay? So if you have another pressure canner, you can just use the rack from the bottom of your extra pressure canner and place that on top of your jars. If you don't have another pressure canner and you don't have another rack, you can also place a towel on top of this lower layer. And then what you want to do is you want to stagger your jars in between the cracks where the jars meet. You want to stagger the jars. Never place a jar directly on top of another jar. Set it off to the side so that it's balancing in between two jars at one time. Otherwise, my husband came up with this handy dandy little thing. This is just literally, we went to our local Fleet Farm, and in the barbecuing section where they sell the grills, they had extra replacement grills for sale. And so he bought the smallest one that they had, and then what he did is he just cut it off to fit inside the canner, and then he took a needle nose pliers and kind of bent over the cut pieces so that they're like little legs. Not that I really need them on the top layer, but on the bottom layer, this works as a bottom layer rack too. Handy little tip there, super, super cheap, and you don't have to wait for them to come in the mail. You can just scoot on off to your Menards or your Lowe's or your Fleet Farm or whatever and see if you can find one of these in the grill section. This has held up for 3 years. It's not rusting. I am not having any problems with it. I really don't know if it was stainless steel. I don't remember, but this has been absolutely fantastic. So there's another little tip for you. Anyway, so I've got my bottom layer. I'm going to just stick a separating rack or a towel in between, and then I'm going to stack in the rest of my jars. Now I did notice when I was off can and I was loading up the bottom layer, just one of these things that I unconsciously do, and I'll just give it to you as a tip. It's just a canner's instinct. Since I'm taking a while doing my video, I was a little concerned my pasta was sticking together because it's been in the pasta sauce, while I'm preparing everything and whatever. And I noticed that I was kind of shaking them as I put them in my canner. And I got to thinking about it. I do that all the time when I'm doing pasta. It's not just because I'm videotaping. It's just a little thing that I do. I kind of swirl them and swish them around in there before I put them in the canner, just to make sure everything is equally distributed and coated and not sticking together. So there's another little tip for you. So load your jars in there, and we are ready to get cooking. So you're going to take and place your lid on top of your canner, lock it in place, and turn on your heat to high. I'm going to bring the canner to a vent, and I will come back onto cam at that point in time because I want you all to see how I personally vent my canner. I'm old school. I've been doing this for 40 years. This is just how I vent my canner. I know that some of the manuals, the pressure cooker manuals, are telling people to do it a little differently these days, but I just like the assurance of knowing that I am venting my canner properly. When you're venting your canner, what you're doing is you're pushing out all the dead air pockets. You've trapped air in here when you put this lid on, okay? You've trapped dead air pockets in there. And what this does is as the water starts to boil and steam, that steam presses out and pushes out all those dead air pockets so that your entire canner is full of steam. And that's super important. The whole premise of pressure canning is based on steam. So you want to make sure that your pressure canner is completely full of steam, and you want to vent it properly to get all of that dead air out of it and fill it completely with steam. So when it gets ready to vent, I'm going to come back on cam and I'll show you what I watched for on that. All right, everybody, I figured that I would come back and do a little bit of troubleshooting for you with a pressure canner. Now, all of your canner models should have an emergency blow-off valve. It's a little black rubber knob in the back of your lid. Now, this little black rubber blow-off emergency valve should be able to go up and down. It needs to be free to move on its own, okay? The pressure inside the pressure canner will make it be in the upright position. If you see steam or hear steam escaping from this, that means that your emergency pressure blow-off valve needs to be cleaned, because it needs to be able to move easily on its own. Okay, the heat inside the canner makes it press up so steam can't escape. Now, another thing is that if you see steam, move you back here a little bit. If you see steam escaping from your canner underneath your lid anywhere, that means that your gasket, your lid gasket, isn't seated properly. Now, there's no pressure in this. There's steam in it, but my pressure valve is not up and it's not in the locked position. So if there is steam coming out from underneath your lid anywhere on your canner, what you can do is you can just slide this lid back and forth a little bit, and a lot of times that will seat that gasket so that then you're not going to have any more leaking of steam or pressure. Now, you can also see that on my pressure valve there's water that's pooling. Now, that is not unusual and it is okay. It doesn't mean that I have overfilled my canner. There's no troubles. What that is it's just full of steam in there, and that water and steam is just collecting on the outside of that pressure valve. So I'll take a cloth and just wipe it off. Protect your hands. It is hot. Wipe it off, and eventually that valve will pop up on its own. Now, you can see that I do not have my weight on my canner yet. And so I am now, my pressure lock, my pressure valve lid lock has popped up on its own without placing my weight or my regulator. This is old school how to vent a canner. I know Presto is telling people that after you see a steady stream of steam, you should put your regulator up and then your pressure valve will pop up. I do it the opposite way. This is how for over 40 years I have vented my canners. I allow this pressure valve to pop up first, and then I consider it a full vent. So now on my stove, I can turn down to medium heat and it will continue to vent, and I'm going to time that vent time for 10 minutes before I place my weights. Alright guys, so my 10-minute venting time is over, and now all I'm going to do is simply place my weight and allow my canner to come up to pressure. I can at 10 pounds of pressure. It depends totally on what your elevation is, how many pounds of pressure that you can at, but if you're using a weight and not a readable gauge, by the weight, from sea level up to 1,000 feet is 10 pounds. Anything above 1,000 feet, you want to use a 15-pound weight. So I'm going to wait for this to come up to pressure, and once it starts rocking gently, then I'm going to time it for 20 minutes. Alright guys, so my weight has now started to rock. It's just rocking nice and gentle. It's a steady rock. This is the point where now I can set my timer and I will time for 20 minutes. Do not start timing until you know you are up to pressure. So I'm going to set my timer, 20 minutes, and we will just keep it rocking steady like that for the entire time, and then I'll come back. All right, guys, so my 20-minute period is up. I'm going to turn my timer off. I'm going to turn my burner off, and I'm not going to touch anything, okay? This is the point in time where you just simply totally walk away from your canner and let it cool off, okay? So after it cools and all of the pressure has come down, I will come back and continue taping at that time. All right, so I am back. Now, how I know that it is safe to remove my regulator or weight is because my pressure gauge or lid lock vent has gone down on its own. Now back there, you can also see that the emergency blow-off valve, that little rubber one that we were talking about, that has gone down too. My pressure gauge is reading 0, but the main things that you want to look for is this lid lock going down, and of course your emergency valve also going down. So now I know that it is safe to remove the regulator, okay? And you want to just set that aside somewhere. Remember, it's hot. All right, now I don't want you to ever just open up your pressure canner and take the lid off. You have to remember that everything inside your pressure canner is extremely hot and your room air temperature is cool. If you just take that lid right off, all of that cold room air is going to rush into your canner and cause siphoning to occur. So we just want to allow it to cool a little bit longer. And how I do this is unlock the lid, okay, just in a completely unlocked position. And then I'm just going to crack that lid open just a little bit. Okay, you can see that I've just moved it off to the side just barely, but I've moved it off to the side just a bit. And now I'm going to let it sit for another 10 or 15 minutes before I remove the lid completely. All right, so I've allowed my canner to cool off for another 10 or 15 minutes, and now it's really safe to remove that lid. Remove it away from you so you don't get steam in your face. And then you can figure out where you put your little lifter-upper things. There they are. Get your can grabbers and carefully remove all of your canned pasta and set it on a towel. You do want to protect your jars from your cold counter because your jars are still extremely hot and your cold counter can actually cause thermal shock and your jars can break. So always have a thick towel down on your counter to place your jars on. But you can see how wonderful these turned out. Just beautiful canned pasta and sauce. Alrighty, so I will finish unloading that in another couple of minutes. Okay, so this is a previously canned jar of the tortellini here, and so I will remove it from the jar. Now I'm not going to heat this up, of course, right now, just because of video purposes, but I just want you to see what the texture of this finished product is. This is very easily microwaved or heated up in a pan on the stove. So you can see that the pasta is still completely whole. Hopefully you can see well there. The pasta is not cooked apart into mush at all. In fact, they're still very firm. I can pick it up with my fork. Let's go around and get another one. Pick it up with your fork. Beautiful consistency. It is not mush, it is not cooked apart, it is not dissolved into the pasta sauce. That is just beautiful pasta. Now, is this al dente? No, it probably isn't al dente. But, you know, canning changes everything. And temperatures when you're canning are, of course, a little bit higher and for a little bit longer than what you would normally cook your food. But my theory is canned food, even if it isn't exactly your preferred texture or firmness, canned food is better than no food at all. So we really like these pastas. Our kids really liked them when they were growing up. Even as adults, they still enjoy them. We ourselves enjoy them. They're great midnight snacks or quick lunches at work. Just so super simple and really, really tasty. These last up to a year shelf life. It's very safe because of the pasta sauce. It's got pretty high acidity in there. One thing I do want to recap with you is that at the beginning of the video, I did state only the cheese pasta. No mushroom pasta, no meat pasta. The reason that is that if you start putting mushroom as an ingredient or meat as an ingredient, then you're having to extend your canning time so much longer that your pasta is going to fall apart and become mush. With the cheese, the 20-minute PC is safe by all means, and the pasta is still going to hold together well. So that is why I say use 3 cheese pasta. Don't go dabbling into that, mushroom one or the meat type, because then you have to extend to a 75-minute canning period in the PC, and that's when your pasta is really going to become mush and just cook apart altogether. So these 3 cheese tortellinis and pasta sauce are fantastic and fun things and easy little meals for anybody in the household to have on your shelf. I hope you enjoyed your time with me today. Thank you for spending it with me, and I hope you found this useful and fun. Until I see you all again, happy canning, everybody.